In the heart of the Rocky Mountains, miles away from civilization, lies the Overlook Hotel. For 6 long months during winter, it is completely isolated, cut off from the world by snow and ice. The story begins with Jack Torrance, a man in search of a fresh start. Jack had been a schoolteacher, but his temper and personal struggles had derailed his career. When he's offered a job as the winter caretaker at the remote Overlook Hotel, it feels like a chance to reinvent himself, to find peace, to finally finish the novel he's always wanted to write. He takes his wife Wendy and their young son Danny on the journey to the hotel, where they will live in complete isolation for the next several months. The drive to the Overlook Hotel feels like a journey into another world. Jack grips the steering wheel, staring ahead at the winding mountain road as the snow piles up around them. As they ascend higher into the Rockies, the towering mountains seem to close in on them. The landscape is beautiful, but unforgiving. The sky is a dull, threatening gray, and the roads are slick with ice. The Torrance family is heading deeper into isolation, further and further from civilization. In the back seat, Danny is silent. He's always been a quiet boy, but there's something different about him. Danny has what some would call a gift. He calls it the shining. He has visions, flashes of things that haven't happened yet, things that might happen, and sometimes things that can't be explained. His ability lets him see into the hearts of others, feel emotions, and connect to a world beyond the ordinary. And as they approach the Overlook Hotel, he feels it. A shadow. A presence. It's as if the hotel is waiting for him. When they arrive at the Overlook, Jack heads inside for his interview. The hotel manager, Mr. Ullman, is polite but stern, and the office feels cold, with large windows looking out onto the snow-covered grounds. Ullman explains the responsibilities of the winter caretaker. Keep the boiler running, maintain the hotel, and make sure everything is in order for the reopening in the spring. But then, Ullman shares a disturbing story. A former caretaker, Delbert Grady, Ullman says, went mad during his time here. The isolation got to him. He murdered his family, his wife, his 2 young daughters. Then he killed himself. Ullman lets the words hang in the air. Jack listens but brushes it off with a smile. It won't happen to him. He's not that kind of man, he tells himself. He can handle it. But something in the way Ullman looks at Jack suggests that the hotel has other plans. The hotel is grand, almost too grand. It feels empty and hollow, even with the Torrance family moving in. As they are given a tour, Wendy admires the opulence of the building, the gleaming chandeliers, the richly patterned carpets, and the endless hallways. To her, it's a beautiful place, full of charm and history. But Danny feels something else. The Overlook is alive, and Danny senses it. The moment he steps into its halls, a coldness wraps around him. The hotel isn't just empty, it's waiting, watching. He feels it pressing in on him, a darkness lurking just beneath the surface. One day, Danny is exploring the hallways on his tricycle, the rhythmic sound of the wheels moving over the hardwood and carpets echoing eerily in the silence. He turns a corner and suddenly stops. Ahead of him is a door. Room 237. It stands slightly ajar, as if beckoning him closer. Danny freezes, staring at the door. His heartbeat quickens. His mind is flooded with images. Flashes of blood, a river of it, flowing through the hotel's halls. He sees 2 little girls standing in the corridor, holding hands. They are silent, motionless, watching him. Then a whisper echoes in his mind. Come play with us, Danny, forever, and ever, and ever. Danny gasps, turning his tricycle sharply, pedaling as fast as he can back down the hall. He doesn't understand it, but he knows one thing for sure. Something terrible has happened here, and it's not over. Meanwhile, Jack is finding it harder to write. The isolation, which he thought would be his creative fuel, is becoming suffocating. He sits for hours in front of the typewriter, his fingers hovering over the keys, unable to form a single coherent thought. Days go by, and the words just won't come. the silence of the Overlook presses down on him. And in that silence, Jack starts to hear things. At first, it's just the faint creak of the old wood settling, or the wind howling through the empty corridors, but soon it becomes more. A whisper, a voice. Sometimes it feels like the hotel itself is speaking to him. His temper grows short. He snaps at Wendy for no reason, and there are moments when he looks at her, and he feels a deep, irrational anger. He starts spending more time alone, away from his family. The hotel, with its endless rooms and winding halls, offers plenty of places to disappear. Wendy senses the change in Jack, but she tells herself it's just the stress. She doesn't see what's happening beneath the surface, the way the hotel is slowly taking hold of Jack's mind, twisting his thoughts, feeding his frustration. It's during one of these moments of growing tension that Danny meets Dick Halloran, the hotel's chef. Halloran is kind, and he has a quiet understanding of the world that comforts Danny. One day, in the hotel's large kitchen, Halloran speaks to Danny in a way that no one else has. Halloran doesn't look at Danny like he's different. He looks at him like he understands. "You've got the shining," Halloran tells him softly. "Just like me. You see things, don't you, boy? Things that most folks can't. And you hear things too." Danny nods. He has always known he was different, but this is the first time someone else has known it too. "This place," Halloran continues, his voice lowering, as if the hotel itself might be listening. "It's got a bad history. It's not just an ordinary building. It's got memories. Not all of them good. You stay away from room 237, you hear me? There's something in that room, something you don't want to see." Danny doesn't need to be told twice. He has already felt the pull of that room. But even as he promises to stay away, he knows that the hotel isn't finished with him yet. Jack's sanity continues to unravel. One night he finds himself in the grand ballroom, alone. Or so he thinks. The room is dimly lit, but Jack feels a presence in the air, thick and oppressive. He walks to the bar, sits down, and without a word, a drink is poured for him. The bartender smiles, though his face is hidden in shadow. Jack drinks, and with each sip, he feels the tension slip away. The hotel is no longer silent. There's music now, faint but growing louder, a lively tune from a time long past. He looks around, and the ballroom is no longer empty. It's filled with people dressed in elegant 1920s attire, laughing, dancing, drinking. And then, Jack meets him. Delbert Grady. The man who once held the same job as Jack, the man who succumbed to the hotel's influence. Grady speaks to Jack calmly, almost warmly, as if they're old friends. He tells Jack that the hotel has plans for him, just as it had plans for Grady. And Jack, ever more disconnected from reality, listens. Grady leans in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Your wife and son. They're holding you back, Mr. Torrance. You'll never finish your work with them around. You need to correct them." The words linger in Jack's mind. The seed has been planted. Wendy, sensing that something is terribly wrong, decides to check on Jack's work. She enters the Grand Colorado Lounge, where Jack has been spending more and more time, and approaches his typewriter. The room is silent, the air heavy with unease. She picks up the pages he has been working on, expecting to see the fruits of his labor. Instead, her heart sinks. The pages are filled with the same sentence, written over and over again. "All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." Wendy flips through the pages frantically, but they're all the same. The repetitive, mindless scrawl. She feels a wave of terror wash over her. Jack has not been writing a novel. He's been descending into madness. And now, there's no telling what he might do. Wendy's heart pounds as she clutches the stack of papers, her breath coming in short gasps. She glances around the room, realizing that Jack might be nearby, watching. The creak of footsteps echoes from the hallway, and her stomach tightens. She knows Jack isn't the same man anymore. Something has twisted his mind, warped his thoughts. Suddenly, Jack appears, his face partially shrouded in shadow. His voice is calm, too calm, as he approaches. "How do you like it?" he asks, his tone dripping with menace. Wendy steps back, clutching the typewriter's pages as if they could shield her from the growing terror. She can see it in his eyes now, the madness, the hotel's influence. Jack isn't just losing his mind, he's become something else, something dangerous. "You've always had a knack for snooping, haven't you, Wendy?" Jack continues, his voice rising with each step closer. Wendy knows she has to get away. Her eyes dart toward the stairs, but Jack is between her and the exit. There's no way out. She's trapped. Meanwhile, Danny is hiding in his room, his small body trembling under the covers. His visions have returned, stronger than ever. The hotel is showing him everything. The river of blood flowing through the hallways, the ghostly twins, the twisted images of death and violence. And in the center of it all, his father. Jack, with an axe in his hands, coming for them. Danny's mind flashes to Halloran, far away, sensing the boy's terror. Halloran, with his own gift of shining, feels the darkness closing in on Danny and knows that he must return to the Overlook. But will he make it in time? Jack's voice thunders through the hotel as he turns his attention to Wendy. He grabs an axe and begins his search. Wendy, panic-stricken, manages to lock herself in the bathroom, but Jack is relentless. He swings the axe into the door, splinters flying with each strike. The blade cuts through the wood, revealing Jack's grinning face in the jagged hole. "Here's Johnny," he growls as Wendy screams in terror. Outside, the wind howls through the hedge maze, where Danny has run to hide. The snow is deep, the cold biting, but Danny knows the maze like the back of his hand. He runs deeper into the labyrinth, his small footprints quickly being erased by the falling snow. At the same time, Halloran arrives at the hotel, drawn by Danny's distress. But as he enters, he finds the Overlook waiting for him. It's not just Jack he needs to worry about. The hotel itself seems to pulse with malevolent energy. Before Halloran can reach Danny, Jack finds him, and without hesitation, strikes him down with the axe. Danny hears the distant cries, and realizes he is truly alone. But he knows the maze, and Jack does not. As his father storms into the maze, calling out for him, Danny crouches down and begins to retrace his steps, walking backward in the snow to cover his tracks. Jack is growing more frantic, more disoriented, as the cold seeps into his bones. He calls out, but his voice is lost in the wind. In the freezing, twisting maze, Jack's mind unravels completely. The cold numbs his body, and his thoughts are consumed with rage and confusion. He stumbles, lost in the maze, the hotel's whispers echoing in his ears. His breathing grows ragged, his pace slowing as he loses his way. The Overlook has taken everything from him, and now it leaves him to freeze. Danny escapes the maze, reuniting with Wendy, who grabs him and flees from the hotel in Halloran's snowcat. As the blizzard rages around them, the Overlook Hotel looms in the background, dark and silent once again. Back in the heart of the maze, Jack collapses in the snow. His breath comes out in ragged gasps before finally stopping. The camera lingers on his frozen body, his eyes wide open, staring into nothingness. The hotel remains standing, as if untouched by the horrors that have unfolded within its walls. Inside, the grand ballroom is silent, but the shadows still cling to the corners. Across the room, settling on a photograph hanging on the wall. It's an old picture, taken decades ago, from one of the hotel's many parties. The crowd is dressed in fine suits and glamorous gowns, laughing and dancing. In the center of the photograph stands Jack Torrance, smiling. The hotel has claimed him. He was always a part of it. The Overlook Hotel stands, waiting for the next soul to fall under its influence,